The case involves the trade of Curt Flood from St. Louis to Philadelphia. That case for Flood is being argued.
It was so difficult for the fans to understand my problems with baseball. I was telling my story to deaf ears because I was telling my story to a person who would give their firstborn child to be doing what I was doing. And he just could not understand how there could be anything possibly wrong with baseball.
For nearly 3 years, Curt Flood had been in the courts, fighting a one-man battle with Major League Baseball over the reserve clause. Despite the advice of the Players' Union, he had left the game in 1969 rather than be traded against his will.
What I told him was that I agreed with him in principle, but that the courts had treated players as property and would likely do so again, and that his attempt, while a principled one, was, I thought, doomed to failure. And I worried about his knowing the kinds of chances he was taking, that he was going to end his career in a case that probably was a loser.
The lawyers for the major leagues would not talk for the cameras, but in the courtroom they argued that the reserve clause is essential to the future of organized baseball, that without the reserve clause, all the rich teams would get all the star players. But Arthur Goldberg maintains that the reserve clause, tying a player to one team for the rest of his life, is in violation of the 13th Amendment. That's the amendment against slavery and indentured servitude.
Flood's first trial had been in federal district court in Manhattan in 1970.
I think Curt Flood on the stand was treated miserably by the federal judge. He almost taunted him. A judge who showed great respect for almost all witnesses who were white. From the bench, the judge asked Curt Flood, "This is not as easy as playing center field, is it?" You know, with a sarcastic tone in the middle of a difficult cross-examination.
No active player dared testify on his behalf. Only owner Bill Veeck and a handful of retired stars came to Flood's defense.
Jackie Robinson walked into the courtroom and there was a hush. He had such a presence that you could hear a pin drop. His hair was white and he was walking with a cane, but he still had that swagger that Jackie Robinson was so noted for. But he testified in my behalf and with a soliloquy that would send chills up and down my spine.
Flood lost in district court and then lost again in the Court of Appeals. And on June 18, 1972, by a vote of 5-3, the United States Supreme Court ruled against him. Baseball was still exempt from antitrust laws, and the reserve clause still stood.
I am particularly pleased that the court has recognized the need for a reserve system and has further recognized that baseball has not disregarded the extremely important position the player occupies. Over the long history of baseball, the reserve system has constantly evolved to improve the position of the player. I am confident that this process will continue.
We lost because my guys, my colleagues, didn't stand up with me. And I can't make any excuse for them. Had we shown any amount of solidarity, if the superstars had stood up and said, "We're with Curt Flood," if the superstars had walked into the courtroom in New York and made their presence known, I think that the owners would have gotten the message very clearly and given me a chance to win that.
Curt Flood never played Major League Baseball again.